Hello and welcome to the Your Next Move podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Brown. And today we're talking about something that affects so many of us, but rarely gets the attention it deserves. Knowing when it's time to take a work break. In our always on culture, stepping away from work can feel impossible. We are constantly bombarded with messages about hustle culture, the glorification of overwork, and the pressure to always be productive. I know I relate to that so much. But what if taking a strategic break is actually the most productive thing you could do for your career long term? Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 clear signs that indicate you might need to take a work break. And I'm not just talking about a vacation where you're checking your email poolside, but a true intentional step back to recharge and reset. I'll also share what you can do about it if you recognize these signs in yourself. Personally, I definitely want to share that I've taken a work break myself. During my last corporate job, I got to the point where full-time entrepreneurship was a thing, even though I still had a full-time 9 to 5. My job was crazy, and I ended up taking a month-long behavioral health leave. So I'm not just sharing this from a place of these are all the things that I've researched and things my clients have gone through. I'm sharing from a place of I've been through this. I ignored the science, and it got to a point where I had to do something. And I'll talk a little bit more on this podcast episode about the specific signs that I noticed in myself that really made it clear it was time to take a break. And when you recognize this in yourself, it's time. Or if you see someone else, I want you to keep that in mind as well. So if you have a friend who may be listening, or you hear things in this podcast that remind you of a friend, go ahead and share it, because it is real. And the last thing you want to do is put yourself in a position where you're forced to take a break because you waited too long. So before we dive in, I want to be clear. Needing a break is not a sign of weakness or failure. Some of the most successful people I know, including prominent leaders like Ariana Huffington, have taken strategic breaks during their careers. In fact, it's also a sign of self-awareness and leadership when you recognize that you need to pause to ultimately move forward stronger. So let's explore these 5 signs together. Sign number 1 is physical symptoms. The first major sign that you need a work break is when your body starts sending signals that something's wrong. Our bodies often recognize what our mind don't want to admit. If you're experiencing persistent physical symptoms like insomnia, headaches, constant fatigue that doesn't improve with a good night's sleep, digestive issues, or even getting sick more often than usual, these could be your body's way of saying enough. And the science is clear. Chronic stress triggers our body's fight or flight response, flooding our system with cortisol. This was evolutionarily designed for short-term threats, not years of continuous work pressure. When the system stays activated too long, it affects nearly every system in your body. I am someone who's gone to the doctor before. I've gone to an immunologist. All they do is decide what type of disease you may have when you have symptoms that generally your primary care may not be able to quite put their finger on. I've gone to my primary care. I've talked to a therapist. I've been in situations before where they're like, the issue is stress. Years ago, the first time I experienced this, I was going through a really rough time at work and in my personal life. And I had all of the symptoms of bronchitis, but I wouldn't test positive for strep or bronchitis. I found myself at an immunologist, and they were going through all these questions. And he finally started to ask me, like, well, what's going on in your life? And I started to explain what was going on. And he's like, you are depressed. And that's what's making you sick. You need rest. You need to talk about this. You can't keep holding it in. And if you know me and a little bit about my work, I have a master's in counseling. So I was like, depression? I ain't got depression. That is not I. And when I sat down and thought about it and talked to some friends and talked to a therapist, that was 100% what was happening. My body manifested bronchitis. I was constantly tired. My body was achy. When I think of the times at work when I've been the most stressed, it shows up in my body, even if my mind is still able to function at the level it needs to. So here's what I want you to watch out for specifically. First up are sleep disruptions, either struggling to fall asleep, stay asleep, or waking up feeling unrefreshed. Tension headaches that become more frequent, constant fatigue that doesn't improve with a weekend of rest, changes in appetite, either loss of hunger or emotional eating, getting cold or infections more frequently as your immune system weakens. If you're nodding along to several of these, your body is trying to tell you something important. And unlike your inbox or your to-do list, your body does not have an unlimited capacity. It does not. You have to take action. So sign number 2 is emotional exhaustion. The second sign is when your emotional reserves are just completely depleted. Emotional exhaustion is different from just feeling tired. It's a state where your emotional resources are so depleted that you find yourself feeling empty, cynical, or detached. You might notice increased irritability, impatience with colleagues or loved ones, or even a sense of emotional numbness. Many professionals I work with describe it as, I just don't care anymore. I have got nothing left to give. This is particularly high among high achieving professionals who are used to being passionate and engaged with their work. For me, I realized right before I took behavioral health leave, I had built in cry time. And let me tell you, you don't need to build in cry time at work if this is you. I had a very stressful global job and I frequently had to get on calls very early in the morning. So it wasn't uncommon for me to have to get up and present at 7 a.m. And I realized when I got to my computer in the morning, I generally would start to panic. And while I was still able to show up well on calls and meetings and everything else, I needed time to panic. And I'd generally be brought to tears. I did not have the emotional fortitude to process the emails coming in, the request for what I had going on, the presentation that was upcoming, and it would bring me to tears. So I started to build in time to give myself to process. So if I had to cry, I could cry. If I needed to yell, I could yell. But I needed some extra time before anything I did in the workplace. Generally, I just needed a good 20 minutes or so in the morning. Once I got into the day, I was okay in quotations. But that is an example for me how the emotional exhaustion showed up. What makes it particularly exhausting and challenging is that it generally spills into your personal life. You might find yourself too drained to engage in activities you enjoyed, feeling disconnected from your friends or your family, experiencing anxiety or depression, or having a shorter fuse or lower frustration tolerance. Using phrases like, I just can't deal with this right now more frequently is a sign that emotional exhaustion is probably what you're feeling. This state is not sustainable. And most importantly, you can't think your way out of emotional exhaustion. No amount of productivity hacks, time management strategies can refill your emotional tank. Only genuine rest and recovery can do that. So next up is sign number 3, declining performance despite longer hours. And this third sign is probably the most ironic because you're working longer hours than ever, but your actual performance is declining. This is one of the clearest indicators that a break is needed, yet it often triggers the opposite response. When we notice our performance is slipping, many of us double down and work even harder, which creates this downward spiral. The tasks that used to take an hour now take 3, making unusual mistakes or overlooking the obvious details. Edit. Difficulty making decisions, even minor ones. You may have trouble focusing or increased distractibility. Your creativity and your problem solving abilities feel blocked. I know for me, when I'm working longer hours, but I'm making more mistakes, that is a sign that this is happening for me. My performance is consistently going down no matter how much I'm working. What's happening psychologically is that your brain needs downtime to function optimally. Research from neuroscience is clear that our brains require periods of rest to consolidate learning, make creative connections, and operate efficiently. If you're putting in more hours but getting less done, it's not a matter of trying harder. It's a signal that your cognitive resources need replenishing. The solution isn't more time in front of your computer, it's strategic rest. This decline in performance, despite increased effort, is especially frustrating for high achievers like myself. And you're used to seeing results when you are putting in the work. But human performance doesn't work like machine performance. You are not designed to operate continuously without breaks. So next up, Number 4, disconnection from purpose and meaning. This fourth sign really hurts because even if you once loved your job, chronic stress and burnout can create a sense of alienation from the very things that used to motivate you. You might find yourself asking, what's the point? Does any of this even matter more frequently? The disconnection often manifests as cynicism about your workplace or industry, trouble remembering why you chose this career path, a sense that your work doesn't make a difference, going through the motions without engagement, loss of professional identity, or questioning a career choice. This disconnection is particularly painful because purpose and meaning are core human needs. When we lose that sense of purpose, our work merely becomes transactional, just trading time for money. And that does not feel good. What's important to understand is that this disconnection doesn't necessarily mean you're in the wrong job or field. It's often a symptom of burnout rather than a true misalignment, but we get that confused. When we're exhausted and depleted, it's very difficult to connect with meaning and purpose in any context. Taking a break can help you rediscover the connection to what originally inspired you, or might clarify that you truly do need a change. Either way, you can't make this assessment clearly when you are in the thick of burnout. And that brings us to sign number 5, the inability to enjoy time away or unplug. The fifth sign is when you find yourself unable to truly unplug or enjoy time away from work. If you're checking email during dinner, thinking about work in the shower, or waking up in the middle of the night with work concerns or feeling anxious whenever you try to relax, these are clear indicators that work has become all consuming. You might notice things like difficulty being present during personal activities, checking your phone compulsively for messages, feeling guilty when not working, bringing your laptop on vacations just in case, a sense of restlessness when trying to relax. I know for me, in May 2021, when I resigned from my full-time job to do my business full-time, I swore that I heard Slack messages all the time. I was so used to jumping to it whenever that ping went off on Slack. I heard it even when I didn't have Slack open. Even when it was just me, I did not have team who was messaging me. I still heard Slack. This constant connection to work creates a state where your nervous system never fully relaxes. You're always in a low grade stress response, which prevents true recovery. It's like trying to charge your phone while continuously using it. The battery will never get back to 100%. What makes this particularly challenging is that it creates a situation where even your off time isn't actually restorative. So you might take a weekend or a vacation, but if you're mentally still at work, you're not getting the recovery benefits that you need. The inability to unplug is often a sign that work has expanded beyond healthy boundaries. Taking a more significant break can help reset those boundaries and remind you that you are not your job. You're a whole person whose identity and worth extend far beyond your professional role. So if you've recognized any of these in yourself, I need you to know that you are not alone. The pressure to constantly perform and remain connected has never been higher, especially in this digital age where we are always connected. Taking a work break, whether that's a few weeks away, a sabbatical, or even a modified work arrangement, isn't admitting defeat. It's a strategic decision to invest in your long-term well-being and career sustainability. And I want to be clear, crystal clear. I'm not suggesting everyone to quit their job tomorrow, because I think whenever I have these conversations, people are like, oh, well, I just can't leave. I just can't step away. There are many ways to create space for recovery, from negotiating a reduced work schedule to a series of long weekends to a formal leave of absence. And to help you navigate this process, I created a comprehensive guide called Taking a Work Break Without the Panic. And this guide walks you through everything from understanding your legal rights and benefits to creating a communication strategy to planning return to work after a break. This isn't just theoretical advice. It's a practical roadmap based on research and real world experience. It addresses the questions that keep people from taking breaks that they need, like, what will my boss think? How will this affect my career? What about my finances? Will my team manage without me? All of these things. To get your copy of this guide, just visit kimberlybonline.com/workbreak, all one word. And because you are a listener of this podcast, use code YourNextMove, again, all one word, to get 50% off, or click the link in the show notes. I'll have it all there. Taking a break doesn't have to derail your career. With the right approach, it can literally be the best career move that you make. I thank you for listening today. But before I let you go, I have to also give a disclaimer. This is not medical advice. This is anecdotal, and please talk to your doctors, your healthcare professionals. If you are experiencing any type of burnout, if you're experiencing any 5 of these symptoms, I'm just sharing what I know, sharing research and my personal experience. If this resonated with you, I ask that you share it with someone who might benefit. And I'd love to hear your thoughts or reviews, and connect with me on social media. Until next time, may your next move, even if it's rest, be your very best move.